If you recall, climate change was our main agenda item in our last synod in June, and we're just planning to update on the progress towards what's called the route map. So essentially, our plan, our overall plan, which will agree with the National Church as to how we're going to tackle net zero carbon. If we can move on to the next slide, we can just show you a picture of what the national picture looked like back in June. So schools covers the bulk, or 47% of overall emissions. Our church halls about a third, and our housing around 16% or so. Those three items come to 96%. So the bulk of the work will be around those three areas. But of course, there'll also be some work with cathedrals, with the offices, with glebe land and other areas to complete the picture. But if we move on to the next slide, I just want to give you a little bit of an update as to the current status for those key three areas. And I think this is good news to some extent, because actually we are making some progress. There's a long way to go. One of the things you'll notice is it's probably good I am moving on from, despite an accounting background, because some of these numbers in terms of the savings don't add up or don't subtract. So I must learn to do my basic maths again. And I'll tell you the real numbers in a moment. But in terms of churches, we have 476 buildings that are open. And of those, 37% or so, 174 churches have completed the energy footprint data. And that's really important because that's the way we can start to build that picture. So at the moment, we don't have an overall view, but we'll be working over the coming months to get a more complete picture. And what we plan to do, our current work is around identifying the top 10 to 20 or so emitters. We know that most of our churches are relatively small, and actually the contribution to CO2 is relatively light, if minuscule. And therefore, we want to work with those top emitters where we see the biggest gains to be made. But that doesn't mean we won't be encouraging small-scale solutions for those small churches where it's more around perhaps heating the person rather than the building, those sort of things. In terms of some of the challenges, really we need more information. So I would encourage you, if you can, to complete the toolkit if you have not done so as yet. And really, it's still early days in terms of identifying the technological solutions that we'll need into the future. So some quick wins, possibly heating cushions for this year, those sort of things. And we have some in the diocese that we're happy for you to use, but also around looking at green energy tariffs as the grid itself starts to begin its journey towards net zero. If we look at our properties, we have 155 properties, and we have a view of all those properties in terms of the CO2 emissions that they will bring through. And we're currently in the process of identifying short-term measures, quick wins, as part of an overall stock condition plan. So our stock condition plan, so the maintenance we plan to do on all our clergy housing over time, will also include how we get towards net zero. The challenge at the moment around that is we've identified some savings. The savings are actually 398 tonnes, not the 634 I've got on the slide, but that's about a 40% saving. So it's not enough. And that would cost us between 11 to 15 million pounds. So there's a lot of work to do still around how we can work through that plan. We need to take that back to Finance Committee and ultimately to Bishop's Council to agree that plan, and then start to identify ways that we may fund it, all within the environment of changes in government policy and working through what's the financial impact if we sell some of the properties and lose that rental income. How do we continue to keep the finances of the organisation sustainable in that interim period? And also, again, looking at green energy. When it comes to our schools, excuse me, we're responsible for 30 of the 87 church schools we have. So the 21 MAT schools, the 9 voluntary aided schools. We know that we have a very clear picture of what the CO2 emissions are. We also know that we can reduce that down to, on this slide, about 140 tonnes, which by my maths is a saving of 427, not 433. And that will cost probably anything up to £18 million or so. Now, most of the funding for our schools will come from central government or locally funded government, but there are, of course, changes in the priorities in terms of government spending at the moment, and there are challenges like RAC, for example, that have taken perhaps some of the eye off the ball when it comes to net zero carbon. And of course, the target is different to our stated target. So some progress, but a long way to go. But we're starting to identify what the savings can be, how much they'll cost, and what we're going to do about it. If we move on to the next slide. Just want to tell you a few things about what we're doing now and what's next. So I'm pleased to say that a couple of days ago, our recruitment for a net zero carbon officer has gone live. It's the website's there. The closing date is 2nd November, and that's working in collaboration with our regional diocese. So we're recruiting together, and we're also got a shared resource role that we will all contribute into to look at our net zero carbon offering together across the region. I think it's the first of its kind, and it's working really well. But we now have recruitment live and pray. And if you know of anyone who would be interested in our role, then please encourage them to apply. And net zero carbon is a key role of Bishop Martin's group that's looking at buildings as a whole. And so it's a key part of what we're doing. And so the focus is very much at the forefront of our minds. We also know that some funding will come through, excuse me, nationally from National Church. We have some funding as part of a £30 million pot that you may or may have not been aware. There's a press release a couple of days ago. The messaging is still a little bit confused about the application process for that, but we're working that through at the moment. And we know that some of our churches have already expressed an interest in being a demonstrator or being able to have a share of that pot of money in order to kickstart their net zero carbon plans. And so as soon as we have more data, more details, we will publish those and make sure that you're all aware of those. But a key part of that is understanding the baseline. So we need to have the information completed in the energy footprint toolkit to be able to progress that. And we're continuing to review, in association with the environmental group, how we're going to monitor our progress in this area and how we establish the most efficient governance arrangements around our whole net zero plan. So at the moment, we're on a journey. We're partway through. We will hopefully be able to bring back to Synod in March the final plans of the route map so that we can all see clearly how we're going to get from the position we're currently in to net zero over the period that we've established. So those are the plans to date. Thank you very much for listening.